Good evening. Tonight, something has happened inside Russia that has left Washington genuinely shocked in a way we haven't seen since this conflict began. U.S. intelligence agencies, who pride themselves on predicting Russian moves, missed this one completely. By the time the truth hit them, it was already too late. Russia has taken an action so unexpected, so strategically calibrated, that it's forced the United States into an emergency reassessment of everything it thought it understood about Moscow's intentions. And here's what Washington isn't admitting: this wasn't improvisation or desperation. It was the product of planning, deception, and calculation that caught the United States flat footed. For a rare moment in modern geopolitics, the world witnessed the limits of American predictive power, and that has truly shaken Washington. Not the action itself, but the realization that Russia can still surprise the world's most powerful intelligence apparatus. What exactly did Russia do? U.S. officials won't say publicly, but here's what we can confirm from intelligence leaks. Russia executed a multi theater move that altered the strategic equation in Eastern Europe, the Middle East, and global energy simultaneously. Three regions, three pressure points, one coordinated action. For years, the United States assumed Russia lacked the resources and capacity to operate outside Ukraine meaningfully. This action proves the opposite. Russia has adapted, expanded its network, and found ways to generate leverage Washington struggled to anticipate. When a great power acts globally again after years of sanctions and isolation, it tells you one thing: the state is not collapsing, it is recalibrating. This recalibration haunts American officials because it suggests the war has entered a new phase where Russia is no longer reacting to Western pressure, but attempting to reverse it. Inside the Situation Room, the mood shifted from confusion to urgency. Analysts scrambled to understand implications for NATO's eastern flank. Cyber units went on silent alert. U.S. embassies received classified guidance. And for the first time in months, the intelligence community admitted internally, we did not detect this soon enough. That sentence sends shockwaves through Washington. U.S. intelligence dominance is supposed to prevent exactly this kind of strategic surprise. But Russia executed the move with unusual discipline. No leaks, no visible preparation. U.S. satellites detected nothing abnormal. Communications intercepts revealed no chatter. Russia masked its intention and revealed it only when it would have maximum psychological impact. From a realist perspective, Russia's action makes perfect sense. Great powers seek leverage wherever they can find it. When they feel pressure on one axis, they open a new one. Russia is telling the United States, you cannot contain us in Ukraine. You cannot isolate us globally. If you tighten pressure here, we increase it somewhere else. This confirms what Washington doesn't want to hear. Russia is not running out of options. It is expanding them. The global consequences are unfolding. Europe scrambles to understand if this signals a new conflict phase. Middle East governments quietly reassess Moscow relationships. China watches closely, studying U.S. responses. But the deepest shock lies in internal U.S. reaction. Washington spent years saying Russia is declining, its military is broken, its alliances are thin, its economy is collapsing. And suddenly Russia demonstrates strategic agility on a global scale. That contradiction breaks American confidence, not because Russia is winning, but because it has shown it can still alter the game. American analysts now debate a question they once dismissed. What if Russia has been preparing something bigger? Not immediate confrontation, but a long-term shift in global posture designed to weaken U.S. influence over a decade. Russia's action fits that pattern. It's not a quick move. It's a structural move designed to put Washington on the defensive. The question in Washington tonight is not simply what Russia did, but what comes next. This move wasn't designed as a one-off strike. It was an opening maneuver that shifts momentum and forces the United States to reorient its entire strategic posture. The anxiety across U.S. intelligence reflects an uncomfortable truth. If Russia planned this for months without detection, there may be more moves already queued behind it. Pentagon officials face a nightmare scenario. They must determine whether Russia is preparing to escalate in Ukraine, destabilize regions outside Europe, expand partnerships with American rivals, or strike at U.S. cyberspace interests. Each option requires a completely different American response. And Russia's success in masking the first move means Washington no longer trusts its ability to anticipate the next. For a superpower relying heavily on prediction, this uncertainty is strategic paralysis. Behind closed doors, analysts study every Russian shift. They're looking for patterns, anything revealing Moscow's follow up. But Russia has stopped behaving in patterns. That makes this moment uniquely dangerous. The Kremlin abandoned the predictable cycle Washington relied on. Instead, it acts opportunistically, exploiting American distraction, European division, and global fatigue. This unpredictability forces the United States into a reactive posture. And when a great power becomes reactive, it loses the strategic initiative. That's what Russia is aiming for. It doesn't need to defeat the United States militarily. It only needs to force Washington to respond to events it didn't shape. And that's exactly what's happening tonight. Russia's latest action also exposes something deeper, a shift in Russian political psychology. For years, Western analysts believed Putin was cornered, weakened, losing control. But this move reveals a leader who still believes he can shape the international system, not through overwhelming power, but through leverage, disruption, and timing. A leader who understands the world is entering a moment of fragmentation where traditional alliances weaken, old institutions lose authority, and new coalitions emerge. In that kind of world, unpredictability becomes a strength. This shift has emboldened Russia's diplomatic reach. Countries that once distanced themselves from Moscow are now taking calls. Governments tired of Western pressure are quietly signaling openness to Russian cooperation. Even U.S. partners, particularly in the Middle East and South Asia, are hedging, not because they trust Russia, but because they fear a future where American dominance is less certain. And that widening space gives Russia more room than it's had in years. Europe feels the growing pressure. European leaders are watching Russia's global maneuver with deep unease, understanding that if Moscow continues expanding its influence outside Europe, then European territory becomes more vulnerable, not because Russia is stronger militarily, but because the United States becomes more divided strategically. Europe needs the US focused, unified, and committed, but Russia's new global pressure points make that increasingly difficult. That's why European intelligence agencies are on edge. They understand that if America is forced to respond elsewhere, NATO's backbone weakens. Ukraine feels this pressure too. Kiev knows that Russia's new global strategy is designed to outlast Western support. The Ukrainians fear that strategic surprise on the global stage could eventually translate into reduced attention for the war. If Russia succeeds in stretching America's commitments, Ukraine risks becoming a secondary priority. And that's precisely what Moscow wants, a gradual erosion of Western unity, not through victory on the battlefield, but through strategic exhaustion. Inside Russia, this success, political, psychological, and diplomatic, will be used to reinforce domestic legitimacy. The Kremlin will portray the latest action as proof that Russia is not isolated, not declining, not at the mercy of the West. And that narrative will resonate because for the first time in months, Russia has delivered a move that genuinely destabilized the US intelligence community. But Washington's concern goes deeper than this moment. US officials fear that Russia has begun laying the foundation for a long-term strategy, one that will outlast sanctions, outlast political cycles, and outlast even the war itself. They fear a Russia that is more integrated with non-Western powers, more entrenched in global influence networks, more insulated from Western pressure, and more capable of undermining the international order the US built after 1945. This is not a return to the Cold War, it's the emergence of a more fluid, more unpredictable balance of power, and Russia is positioning itself early for that future. So the question, what comes next, is not just about Russia's next move. It's about whether the United States can adapt quickly enough to regain the strategic initiative. Can Washington rebuild the alliances that have weakened? Can it maintain focus in a world pulling it in multiple directions? Can it resist the temptation to overextend? Can it prevent Russia from turning every weakness into a pressure point? Tonight, America is on high alert because it realizes something fundamental. Russia has shifted the rules of engagement, and Washington must now decide whether it responds with caution, escalation, or a complete strategic overhaul. None of those choices are easy. All of them carry consequences. But one thing is clear. The world is no longer dealing with a predictable actor constrained by sanctions and isolated by the West. It's dealing with a Russia that has reactivated its global instincts, rediscovered its geopolitical confidence, and demonstrated that it can still reshape the international landscape in ways that catch even the United States off guard. Whatever comes next will not be shaped by accidents or improvisation. It will be shaped by a Russia operating with a level of strategic clarity the world has underestimated. Tonight's shock is only the beginning.